What's making headlines on the dailies and just whiz through and quickly look through some of the stories. On the Standard this morning, we have freeze taxes to save Kenyans, MPs tell Uhuru. Of course, one of the hits that we are likely to get is that of the economy. It's already taking a hit, and one wonders how we're going to recover from this. So some of the measures that are being advised is a freeze on taxes. President declares National Prayer Day as leaders and investors ask government to create a crisis fund, suspend taxes, cut bank lending rates to cushion citizens from impact of the coronavirus lockdown. And just to read what some of the leaders have said, we have Treasury Cabinet Secretary Uhuru saying we shall have a comprehensive view of the situation and proposals on the way forward by Thursday. So we should expect by tomorrow they're going to be giving us direction on how that's going to be done and what government can do to ensure that they cushion the citizenry from what is happening right now. Majority Leader Eden Duale says a lot of business in our country will be affected. As Parliament, we must sit down with the National Treasury and create a fund to cushion them. This is absolutely true. How that is going to be done, again, is up to the legislators, and we hope that they're going to do this and do this well. The government should temporarily consider zero-rating taxes on sanitary items due to the huge demand. This is from Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo. We also have those in the business sector making their voices heard, and we have the likes of KM Chair Sanchem Gudka, who says that the government could clear outstanding VAT refunds, cushion SMEs by reducing VAT and corporate taxes, and zero-rate taxes on essentials. This, of course, trying to ensure that we cushion the Mwananchi and citizenry from the effects of what is happening right now with a total lockdown. I mean, you can imagine even small gatherings that would otherwise keep money flowing have had to be stopped. We've had quite a number of cancellation of seminars and conferences and things that would otherwise have money exchanging hands, but that's not happening. Why? Because of the current crisis that we have. We need a crisis fund to cushion businesses. People will have to operate from home, while others may not be productive. How will we cover the working population while they are not at work? That cost cannot be pushed to business alone. That's Jacqueline Mugo, FKE boss. So as they continue to grapple and look at how that is going to be done, well, we continue to do our part as a citizenry to ensure that we contain the coronavirus. State urged to prepare bailouts as pandemic stresses the economy, imagining that even the very mamamboga or vegetable seller is not able to sell as they normally would by virtue of the fact that there's limited, limited movement from the citizenry. MPs call for crisis and fund cushion business from an impact of changing operations such as scaling down in short term. And some interviews that were carried out with some of those retailers evidently show a major decline in their sales, which is likely to affect every part of the economy, as you can imagine. On page 3 of the Standard, we have companies turn to e-commerce to attract customers locked at home. So, of course, creativity now has to come into place, and some of those creative ways of ensuring that they still manage to make sales is, for instance, retailers resorting to use apps, to use mobile phones and technology via internet to still be able to have people buy what they need to buy and also deliver them to their homes. For instance, just the very basic needs that you may have of milk, of vegetables and all that. But of course, there's also the question of affordability. How many people can actually afford to subscribe to those kind of services? Because of course, they do come with a cost, because for the retailers to manage to do this, they would definitely be incurring a transport cost, possibly handlers cost, and therefore there's a need for that price to be slightly higher than you would have those goods bought at a supermarket. But there you go. Those are some of the creative ways that companies are looking at, embarking on to ensure that the country remains afloat and they still manage to make a sale. But of course, the question remains, how many people can afford that kind of a service? On page 4, we have the president declaring a national prayer day over the crisis. This is going to be on Saturday. President asks Kenyans to seek divine help at their homes or places of work, while PCEA suspends church services. We have quite a number of churches that actually suspended their normal gatherings and church services, including Sundays. And this, of course, is to do their part to ensure that people do not gather in large numbers. This, of course, being one of the areas where people can easily spread the virus and have this flu continue spreading. So churches coming together to say that, look, we are going to suspend all our services and use every available opportunity to ensure that we do our part, and use also the technology that we have by having digital platforms now transmit their sermons. Now, Uhuru also asked Kenyans to observe the Saturday prayer in their homes. This is key, because normally when we have the National Day of Prayer, remember, there's normally a gathering by members of parliament and leaders in one place. Then you also have Kenyans who are invited to come together. But this particular one is going to be different by virtue of the fact that people are not going to gather, except we're going to have a few parliamentarians gathering in parliament, and this is where the National Prayer Day is going to be observed. Now, he said that Saturday prayer will be in their homes and places of work, or wherever they shall be. He said the government has done and continue to do everything possible to keep citizens safe and prevent further spread of the virus, while ensuring the continuity of business operations. Remember, this is also on the background of the 4th confirmed case being announced yesterday, that now we have 4 confirmed cases, although we also have an incident and a particular story, which is the headline for the Daily Nation. Negative test woman rushed back to ward. This is a woman who had taken herself to be tested and checked. She was tested negative and was released by the hospital, but on reaching home, she felt the symptoms were not reducing. In fact, if anything, there was a heightening of the symptoms, and this made her go back to, she tried the, which is interesting, she tried the, numbers given, the hotlines to call. There was no answer. She was not able to get help. So she decided to go back to hospital. She was readmitted. But of course, that is worrying, given that, one, she was in hospital, she was released, but felt that her symptoms were not improving in any way. But what's also of concern, excuse me, is that she got back to hospital via public means, and of course that means she probably was in contact with other people. So we just hope that she was still negative and was, some of the symptoms that she had was she had headache, she had flu symptoms, she was coughing, and she decided to check herself back in. So that, of course, being a little bit worrying. Page 7 of the Standard, Kenyans should brace for a long lockdown ahead. Again, this is of concern, given that it's going to affect the economy and in every aspect of it. I mean, we have schools now on a total lockdown, with students going back home. And by today, even those in boarding schools should have gotten home. But of course, there's also the questions that is being asked once they're home. How do we handle these children? Because they're likely, depending on their age, to interact with other children and to play. And you really would find it very difficult as a parent to lock them in the house and have them in the house all day. So we'll have to come up with very creative ways of ensuring that we keep these children very busy. But of course, there's also the question of how their learning is going to be affected. And the digital platforms now are really going to come into play. However, the question also remains of how many children have access, for instance, to internet, or to laptops, or to digital devices that can help them continue learning, mobile phones that are able to get onto the internet, and maybe for them to be able to converse or interact with their teachers and their supervisors to ensure that they continue learning. Lessons go digital as school break. And this is a story on page 8 of the Standard. Government rolls out radio and online classes to make up for the lost time. Some of these are the ones that I'm saying that it may change change the way we do things to a point where we're not sure whether things will go back as they were before, or some of these things that we're going to be forced to do right now are going to be standard mode of operation even moving forward. Can radio replace classroom teachers during school shutdown? That's a question that's been asked. It reminds me of a time back in the day when we'd actually have specific or certain lessons that would be done via radio. And this is, the radio would be brought into class and would listen to that. But now it looks like we may have to invest in radios in our homes to ensure that our children continue learning. So those are some of the questions being asked right here. I don't know if you're going to be getting out of your home today, but do get yourself a copy of the Standard and see whether this works for you and whether this is something that the ministry might consider to do, where they'll have students pick up lessons from radio and other digital devices. German tourist vows to stay put in Kenya, and this is a tourist who, Christina Michael, who has visited Kenyan coast since 1981, and says she feels safer in Kenya than in Germany. So for those of you who are always dissing your country na kuvumilia kuwa wa Kenya, there are foreigners who are coming into the country and saying, look, I feel safer in Kenya than in Germany. So there you go. Real Times is this local film break. That's a story that's going on there. Let's see what else we have in store for you in the papers. It's quite a lot. Of course, I'd say a good portion of the newspaper news today is mainly on the coronavirus and the effects that we are experiencing. Looking at the Daily Nation, we've already looked at the headline, which is negative test, woman rushed back to ward. And this is again to do with that woman who tested negative and was released by the hospital. However, she checked herself back in, given that she felt her symptoms were not reducing or improving in any form or manner. On page 5 of The Nation, heavy losses as order against public gathering takes effect, and there's a picture there that describes what some of the businesses are going through, and there's a picture of a man who has dumped all flowers. You can imagine, with flowers that possibly cannot wait for time to be harvested. You cannot delay them, you cannot preserve them. When it's time for them to be harvested, it's time for them to be harvested, and all those flowers, possibly for the export market, have had to be thrown away, literally. So you can imagine the losses that some of the farmers are going through already, because this is, of course, with the travel restrictions that have been put in place, and also the total shutdown in some of the potential markets that are there. You can imagine that, of course, has caused a challenge and a strain in many goods. We did have the government mention that they will try, and I think this was through the CS for Health, Mutai Kagwe, mentioned that we'll try and have goods continue to be imported and exported, but how that is going to work remains to be seen. Security fears as lockdown looms. Again, that's another challenge. That's on page 6 of The Nation, where security is likely to take a hit, with people, first of all, being idle, not having labor that they can work and earn money, and that is likely to spike the security situation in the country by virtue of the fact we'll have maybe more muggings and things like that. Do we have the capacity to ensure that we keep the country safe? That, again, is another challenge that is looming. And the CS for Internal Security is hands-on, making sure that they do all that needs to be done to ensure that the country remains safe. However, we are, as Kenyans, asked to be vigilant and ensure that we keep and do our part. Fatal attraction, when love between prisoners turns deadly behind bars, is a story that is on page 12 of the Daily Nation. And this is prisoners who, well, get attracted to each other behind bars, but the story becomes more bizarre as it continues. Do get yourself a copy of The Nation to see what that is all about. Let's finish off with a cartoon on page 14 of the Daily Nation. Last line of defense, and this is, of course, to do with the coronavirus. They've used a picture which depicts what we are going through, and you have soap, water, and a sanitizer. But is that going to be our solution? Is that what's going to help us? That is the last line of defense that we have right now before the coronavirus scores a goal against us. So that's what we have for you right here on the newspapers this morning. So do stay with us. A quick reminder of that question that we'd like to hear what your take is, and we're asking, how has the coronavirus, COVID-19, affected your day-to-day living? How has that affected your day-to-day living? And we're going to be talking about this on a social perspective and how this is likely to affect and impact us as a community, as a society, and change some of the things that we do. And is this going to be a lasting change, or is it something that we're likely to forget very quickly after it has gone? And we already have our guest in studio, locked and ready to have this discussion with us. So do stay with us as you let us know what you think. How was the coronavirus affected your day-to-day living? We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We'll be right back.